There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first 2025 career panel here with Penn LPS Online. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Kristen Sowden, and I serve as our Associate Director of Career Advising and Planning. And I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce you today to three of our very talented alums. We have Trevor, Sydney, and Tiffany, and each have graduated from the BAS degree and have a completely different um, industry kind of perspective on how they were able to take the BAS and use it for what came next. So, a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you would please be sure that you are muted. If you have questions, I'm hoping that we have some time at the end for questions. Please go ahead and put those in the chat, and I will do my best to kind of moderate as we go through. But I do want to make sure that everyone can hear our panelists, which is why I'm asking for that mute. We have some other folks coming in. There we go. Hello and welcome. I believe that's all I have for housekeeping, except I wanted to share that I hope this to be an opportunity for us to really have a conversation and get to know Trevor, Sydney, and Tiffany's perspectives in a very realistic and authentic way. Of course, part of my role is helping with career outcomes, and so I get to hear about all these amazing stories all the time, but I want you to hear it from them today. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to each of our panelists and just give you an opportunity to tell us about yourselves. You can tell us about where you're from, what attracted you to the BAS program, your concentration, the year that you graduated. We want to hear about who you are and what brought you to the BAS. Okay, so with that in mind, Trevor, would you like to? You're the first on my screen, so would you like to start, Trevor?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Trevor Beecham. I came to LPS pretty much straight out of high school. So I know I kind of have the Doogie Howser look to me. That is because I am barely 12 years old. So when I did come to LPS, I needed something a little bit more alternative, and that's because I do have a disability, and I knew that approaching my college years was going to be something different because of that. And so I was on the lookout for that. And on top of that, I was balancing working at a bank at the time, getting my loan originator license, and kind of just balancing the pandemic all in there. Currently, after having gotten my LPS degree, and now working on my master's degree at the Harvard Extension School in finance. I'm working as the controller of our family construction company, as well as a high school teacher for one of our local schools. So it's very exciting and a little bit of a mix there that kind of got brought on by working with the Venture Lab while I was at Penn. So an exciting opportunity.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you so much. Sydney, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Sydney Bronstein. I currently live in New Jersey with my husband and rescue pup named Wooly James. I was a professional ballet dancer for many years. And so it was really difficult for me to one, afford schooling and then to make the time for it because I also had another job as well. So I initially started in community college and I did that to just get as many credits as possible. And then I really searched high and low for programs that both fit working full time and having to support myself, and also just that would fit my vision for my future. And Penn just absolutely was just so different. And I remember my first meeting with Kathy Urban. She was just so positive about how different my transcript was, which usually would be looked at as a negative, but it was just such a positive feel-good experience. And I just knew that I had found my place at Penn. And it actually, through my time at Penn and just everything that I've gained there, I actually landed my dream job at the American Guild of Musical Artists as a business representative, where I currently work. And I represent all types of performing artists, but my passion definitely lies in changing the ballet industry from what I experienced throughout my career, and negotiating better contracts and just safer protections for artists. So that's where I'm currently at.
Thank you, Sydney. And you do have the cutest rescue pup.
Thank you.
Yes, for all the animal lovers here, yes. All right, thank you. All right, Tiffany, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Is the Wi-Fi okay? It's showing lagging on my screen, so I'll make sure. Cool. Yeah, so I'm Tiffany Hatchkatellis. I started with Penn and I really wanted like kind of an alternative to my schooling in college because I was a competitive figure skater. So I was traveling around training for that. And then when I was kind of actually wrapping up my figure skating like career and like done with training, I ended up becoming a flight attendant for Delta Airlines. So I was traveling with my schoolwork with my laptop in hand in the jump seat and on all of my layovers doing essays and different projects like that. So quite literally 30,000 feet above the ground was my classroom. So that was a really great way to get my degree while also working full time, which also led me to where I'm at right now. So I work in the OCC at the headquarters at Delta. So it's Operations Control Center. I had a whirlwind of a year, but I got connected with a couple of VPs within the company and then got referred to this job because I'm also pursuing my pilot's license. So I've got my private license right now. I'm finishing up instrument over the next couple of weeks and then trying to segue myself within flight ops. So the name and degree has definitely helped progress my career. I majored in data analytics, and right now I am working with a team that we specialize in crew resource technology, and we're implementing the optimizing engine for crew reroutes. So it's definitely helped along my route for sure.
And Tiffany, if I'm remembering correctly, right after this, you have to go have a meeting with a pilot, right?
Yes, with Brad Sheehan. He's our chief pilot of Delta Airlines. So I've gotten very fortunate, like I said, but the name of the degree has definitely helped progress me in my career. But yeah, I got connected with Joanne Smith. She was an EVP for one of us, she was a chief people officer. She was really nice, connected me, like she heard my story and what I want to pursue. She was nice and connected me this summer with Brad Sheehan, who's kind of taken me under his wing, and he referred me with Bill, and he's our general manager for crew resources and tracking. So it's been very nice connecting in this realm of everything.
So cool. So cool. I love that. So many thanks to each of you. I hope for those of you who are in the audience right now, you are listening to just how different each of these career trajectories are and how the BAS is able to serve so many students in so many different walks of life. It's one of my favorite things about working with our students is there are no two stories that are the same. And if you look at our career outcomes, that's actually very similar. All of our students generally go into different things, right? It's really you finding your narrative and moving forward in what feels purposeful and meaningful to you. So thank you for real life demonstrating that. So my first question for each of you is about your actual degree, right? So tell me about the coursework and how it prepared you for completing your career path. Kind of how did it bring you to that? If you want to talk about what employers thought about it, and any specific jobs or skills that you had during that time that you felt really differentiated you from that. So I know that's a big question and we can come to each of the parts, but I generally want to hear about that BAS experience and how it propelled you into the next step. And any of you can take that, whoever feels most comfortable.
I can go. So my major was individualized studies, and I had concentrations in applied positive psychology and professional writing. At the time when I started at Penn, I was actually working at a marketing firm, And so like the professional writing was just such a lifesaver because I was interning there and I was learning skills like crisis communication and just all of these things that helped me advance in my job. And I feel like my colleagues were asking me questions if like they could meet with my professors and see what we were doing. And then as I went on, I progressed at Penn. I was taking a lot more of the psychology classes. And I remember specifically positive psychology at work was just such a fantastic class. And I use like some of the skills that I learned in that class now with our organizing with all of our members. It's just so useful to have skills like active listening and just things that like you don't really learn, I would say, in a traditional college path. And I loved all of the people in my classes at that point too. And I just feel like you just watch like the growth of your classmates, especially like on the psychology track. Cause I just felt like we all were just so excited to see each other succeed and hear about us like getting new jobs. And so that kind of took me into my current job as a union representative. So overall, like incredibly useful and just still things that I draw from in my current career.
We hear all the time about those writing courses. So love,
Yeah.
that is truly transformative for folks in their personal and professional lives. So thrilled to hear that from you too, Sydney. Thank you. Trevor, Tiffany?
I would say that, so I concentrated, so it's similar to Sydney. I was an individualized study major. So my three subject areas were organizational anthropology, global and regional studies, and leadership. It wasn't the communication portion. And I would say that a lot of my courses that I selected, it was with the objective of working towards eventually moving into an organization and building an organization. I knew that I wanted to enter entrepreneurship. I knew that was an area that I was very much interested in. And so my courses that I selected and ultimately got approved, um, they were really centered around building and coaching and ultimately what would turn into a job in teaching and helping manage an organization that we came into as a family. And so those skills from Penn, I would say the most valuable of them were really those soft skills that Sydney mentioned. I mean, being able to communicate, being able to not only understand what we're doing in our workplace, but how to coach others through it, how to manage them. That's something that isn't directly taught in many classrooms. And I think being able to navigate not only the cultural differences that might emerge, but different communication preferences, different ways that we need to not only speak, but write. Those are all ways that I think are explored not just in the professional writing program, which I did get a certificate in. Didn't kind of factor it into the degree, but that was there. I think it was very valuable. And even if you take one course in data analytics, that's still enough to understand or at least empathize with those that are in your workplace that have to use those skills every day, because then you're at least equipped to see what those smaller tasks are and move forward from that and kind of build a team around it.
Trevor, you said that so much better than I could have ever thought. That was really very succinct and very poignant. Awesome. Thank you for that. Tiffany, you are our lone, not individualized studies, right?
I guess so. Yeah. So I did the data analytics and social studies as my career or my degree specific courses. I got a bunch of certificates in professional writing, creative writing, and I always joked that at Penn, we call it that because you need a good pen because there are so many writing classes. So I feel like I was taking more writing classes than anything else, but I was really interested in communications and leadership initially because I was running a small startup business when I also was starting into my career or into my college as well. So like Trevor said, I think it's a really an amazing program that you can find certain degree classes, even if they're not specific to your degree, to enhance yourself in and kind of grow your mindset over. And just every single day at work, I'm using, professional writing to help alternate email. Right now, we're setting up training systems for the next group of specialists. That's like my title within my department that are coming in to train them. And I mean, the communications and leadership aspect of that has helped me immensely. And then also just how to write a professional email. I mean, on the day-to-day, I'm talking to leadership, and it's very relevant in my workspace. And then within my data degree classes, that's really helped me in a critical analytical way of thinking, because although it's a different system that I've had to learn, we use an old software here that's completely different than anywhere else. It's just progressed me in the way that my logic for coding has really just expanded, and it's helped me with having some Python experience, some RStudio experience, and in the way of how code represents in what you're doing. So I feel like those courses really trained my brain for the way of thinking. Even though the systems are different, it's just allowed me to be kind of creative in the coding hard back frame of data.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I will just, as the instructor of BAS 4000 who works with students in those artifacts, those timeless skills, things like communication and digital literacy, we hear all the time that those are the timeless skills that help students propel forward into graduate school, into their career, even sometimes into volunteer work or entrepreneurship, excuse me. So there's always this I feel like these anchors or tenets that you're able to grab from your pen experience that help propel folks in amazing and incredible ways. So thank you so much to each of you. I want to shift just a little bit and talk about the perception of your degree. So I will tell you, I was actually just at a recruitment fair yesterday, and I had students asking, so this is an online degree. How is it perceived by employers or by graduate schools? Do people think differently about an online degree as being less rigorous or any of that? Can you all tell me your real life perceptions of what it was like to earn an online degree? How have employers seen that? How have the stakeholders in your life perceived it? I would just love to hear your experience.
I can go first if we can. I would say so. While I was still, and it was my final semester, is while I was doing the portfolio. Um, I would say that while I was putting out the applications on Handshake, which was a fantastic platform to have, I did get job offers and I did land interviews for a VC analyst role, for a couple others, and it ultimately didn't work out because of location or time constraints or whatever it was. But I would say overall, no. Um, there was not too much of pushback, at least verbally to me, about the content itself. And I I listed it out on the resume. Like there was nothing hidden about the fact that it was a bachelor's of applied arts and sciences, that it was online, that it was a part of the LPS college. So I would say no. Um, are there employers might consider might consider it some way or another? Perhaps, but in my experience, no. Actively job searching, no.
Yeah, I would say similar to Trevor. I mean, not that I ever tried to hide the fact that it's an online program, but I feel like I just have that I graduated the University of Pennsylvania, I have my BAAS, and like no one really asks. They just see the Penn name and they just assume like, oh, she has a degree from Penn, like that's really awesome. And I've definitely seen people look at me differently because I have that, just even at my job, or like if I've shared it with some of our members or just anyone in my life. But yeah, if someone asked me if I went in person, I'm like, oh yeah, it was online. And they asked me how that was. And I just speak so highly of it and said it just fit my lifestyle so much better and allowed me to work full time. And I think when you frame it like that, people have so much more respect because it's incredibly difficult to work a full-time job, as I'm sure many of you know, and go to school. So I feel like that kind of stops any kind of criticism of the fact that it's an online program.
Yeah, similarly, I had a same experience. I mean, it's been notable on my resume, and a lot of people are taken aback when they hear of everything else I was doing at the same time. That if anything, it's been really a great thing that it was online because it allowed for so many other opportunities that people would never be able to do being on a brick and mortar campus throughout college and getting their degree. So I do think it's a highlight actually that I'm like, yeah, I was working full time or traveling or skating or having my business run at the same exact time. And then even like pursuing my pilot's license. And so it's really kind of been a step above, I feel like, than if it was just an on campus degree, which it's in my mind is awesome. But yeah, it's been a very positive thing for sure.
So well said, each of you. Thank you. I totally agree. It's a step above because you're getting the opportunity to study, to have this world-class education, to be a part of the School of Arts and Sciences here at Penn, but also have these other obligations in your life, right? It's, being able to literally travel around the world, being able to stay as a performing artist, being able to stay committed to your community, to your family, to other businesses that you might have. We know that in the job application process, students who find ways to differentiate themselves do better. And so by having that professional experience, by being able to communicate all the ways that you have already worked towards discipline and teamwork and all of those wonderful things, that makes you all the better. And so I think this is like the best of all worlds, right? You're getting the chance to do this incredible degree, to be a part of the wonderful Penn community, but also stay committed to what's also calling your heart. So I love to hear that really was represented in each of your experiences. Thank you very much. Can you all tell me, this is kind of just a fun one, like what was your favorite part of the BAS? Did you have a favorite professor, a favorite class, an opportunity? Like what really, as you think back now, is the defining moment of your career here?
I
I
can
can
jump
start.
in.
Oh, go ahead, Tiffany. You can start.
Hey, graduation was so much fun to finally be all together, as funny as that sounds, but it was really fun to go in person and be all together. That was like a really exciting point to be, meeting everybody that you've worked through your degree with. And that was just like an exciting day. I think back to that all the time. And it was funny how close we all were when graduating, having never met before in person. And then also my data classes were definitely hard, definitely challenging, but that's where all of us became really close because we had to. And so proofing everybody's lines of codes, I remember how gruesome that was, but at the same time, it was so monumental when you'd, run it and you'd see what you were producing and their final projects and different capstones were really exciting with that. So I will see that for me was like the monumental, like exciting moments.
I would say similar to Tiffany, for me, it was just all of the people and just how everyone's from such a different background. And I think as an older student, that's just like the coolest thing ever to meet other people who didn't forge this traditional path and just have such a high respect for. And like meeting them at graduation as well was just like such a cool experience because I feel like you're just even prouder of each other for accomplishing this big milestone. And most of us, had other paths in life and like went back to school at a later age. And I think even that itself is a huge accomplishment. So I feel like that's just one of the best things about the program is just that everyone is just so unique and you can just learn so much from your classmates.
I would echo that because the program is small enough still, you do forge connections not only with other students but with the professors as well. Um, I can't agree with Tiffany that I miss having to do the coding. I can't go that far. But what I will say is that the professors are listening. You're not necessarily dealing with a TA in your course. You're dealing directly with the instructor. And that's something that's really valuable that I thought was very different about the LPS program. And something that I'd been warned about is, oh, well, watch out for TAs. And this was before Penn, but watch out, it'll just be a class that'll be so huge, it'll be taught by the TAs and you won't have that much of a connection. Well, that's not true. So like say one area where I just wanted it so bad is to have an economics course or to be able to take an economics course. And so I voiced that desire to one of my professors, who's Dr. Harold, and she took that extra step and she ended up originating or helping to originate one of those courses combined or partnered with another professor here at Penn. And so it actually added to the overall uh, to the class selection, just voicing that. And I don't know if I was the only one to have asked for that economics program or the course, but the very fact that you can voice that and it can be heard in order to improve the program, that's monumental to me. And the other element too is being at Penn, you do have access to the other student organizations outside of LPS. So you can join Venture Lab if you want to start a business, if you want access to competitions and funding and you want to learn how to build a pitch deck, or you can join the credit union and you can work and get job experience at a retail bank in a retail bank setting, or you can join, do different things and work with different people across the different schools. So you're not necessarily limited to just LPS either and the connections you make there. You can also go a lot further. And so between those two things, kind of the intimacy of LPS, but also the connections that come with more broadly at Penn, those were my two kind of big takeaways.
And I will point out that, again, thank you so much. We have a relationship with the Center for, it's called CURF, the Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships. For those of you who maybe are seeing this and are current students, please check that out. It is an amazing office that has a ton of great virtual programming. So I always plug, I feel like it's kind of a hidden gem at Penn, especially for our students. So please, if you haven't already looked at that, curf.upenn.edu, as I'm pretty sure they're, yes, thank you, Akila. Thank you. All right, thank you, thank you. Each of you answered, correct? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Since we're not going in order, I just wanted to make sure we heard all of your perspectives. Thank you. So let's switch a little bit to the job and graduate for you, Trevor, the graduate school process. Okay. So of course, that's a really, really big part of my job is helping folks prepare for the next step. What kinds of things, practical things, did you do with your resumes, with your cover letters, researching graduate programs, researching new opportunities? Just kind of tell me what that looked like for you and how the resources that you maybe found most beneficial or most compelling.
Did you want me to pick that up? Okay, I don't know. Okay.
Whoever wants to. I think, Trevor, you're the only one currently in grad school, right?
I can confirm, yes, I am in grad school. I don't know if I'm the only.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, so so for Curve, so coming directly out of Penn and kind of taking a look at what I wanted for graduate school, Curve was an excellent resource, as was Kathy and as was Kristen, just in terms of kind of being a soundboard with what I should do, because I had a couple ideas as to where I wanted to pursue things. And so um, ultimately, I ended up going with the Harvard Extension School because I secured a couple job offers. I knew we were going through a transition here in California with a few business opportunities. So I wanted to stay local, but I also wanted to pursue a more challenging curriculum. And that's ultimately where I ended up with at the Harvard Extension School. But CURF also has opportunities with different fellowships that connect you internationally. So, or I wasn't looking too much domestically because I knew that if I was going to go, I wanted to go all the way. I was going across the pond. So I didn't look too much domestically, although I am positive that there are fellowships from CURF that would help with those domestically. But I was looking into Europe and Britain and different hybrid programs that would accommodate that. And they do exist. They are open to LPS students. So I was very encouraged by that and the fact that there were resources there. I think that a large portion of it, at least at the graduate level for me, was making sure, and this is speaking highly of the LPS program, I wanted to make sure that the bar was met because I had taken other online courses. It was not as demanding as I thought it would be as it was at Penn. And so I wanted to find a program that I thought would be comparable to it. I was very happy to find one at least the graduate level that is. But I think that the fact that Penn set the standard for me was, and that was awesome. That was great. What was the second half of the question for after that?
Just about your process, right? So, putting together those applications, calling upon if you needed references or letters of recommendation, kind of what that looked like for you.
Yes. So I think for me, what that was is, and I had met with my advisor. It was Sarah Libros at the time. I don't know if she's still with your team.
We now have Lizzie Raffo. Some of you may know.
Okay.
Yay, Lizzie. And Shamoya Waller. Yeah, I saw.
Okay. So I met with my academic advisor. I met with Kristen and I met with Kathy frequently. I think I met with you all very often. I think probably more often than more than a few students too. And so in terms of recommendations, in terms of kind of building those relationships, they were all very helpful resources in terms of securing those recommendation letters if I needed them, in terms of talking about different opportunities for scholarships. So a big one was working through and kind of voicing that I needed help with the scholarship while I was at Penn and at the undergraduate level. And so that was one that we were able to work through together as well. So I think really just making sure that you forge those relationships is I think the more important part, because if you are in an online setting, you're not going to be forced to do it. And just know that the people that would otherwise be there, they still are. You just you have to foster that, and the staff at Penn are very willing to do so.
I feel like Trevor said that so well about being active, about making connections, that I don't even know if I can add to it even in a better way, but it is so true. You have to be active about progressing in your career, those connections. Obviously, online, there is somewhat of a barrier. And I will say my timing of doing my coursework online is very unique because it was at the same time COVID hit. So everyone became online. And so I think everyone was forced into a kind of unfamiliar territory, whereas us that were already online, we were kind of like, we've been here, this is normal. And so that was an advantage to my timing of when I was doing my coursework and making those connections. And I will say we have a couple different, I'm sure we're still doing career opportunities and virtual like events and different fairs like that were really good to go and kind of get in that swing of things of building those connections while also taking initiative upon myself. I mean, I've been an active person just within my company of just meeting people and growing that. I'm sure like Sydney and Trevor are very similar of just being outwards towards making sure that you're not missing those opportunities, because that's really important. And I think that's why we're all sitting here in this today, because it's making sure to keep growing connections and taking care of those that are, in the same shoes that we were throughout our schooling. So
Yeah, I think from a coursework perspective, what prepared me for the workforce, well, I was already in the workforce, but what prepared me to apply for jobs and just be like more prepared was I remember I took specifically like writing for social media. And so I totally had revamped like my LinkedIn and all of the information on it. And I think that really helped me. And then I know like I guess my side is like a little bit different because I didn't necessarily network within Penn to get my job. But networking for sure was like something that I learned at Penn that I applied, where the first thing that I did was I contacted someone that had my exact job on the West Coast. And I asked that person to do a call with me and just say, like, you know, like, what are the requirements? What are they looking for? And I've found that people are always really willing to do those calls with you and like just ask if you have a mutual connection. Like, it's not going to hurt. Usually people do want to talk about their jobs and do want to talk about how they got there. And then from there, like, I found someone in the industry or that was formerly in the industry and did a few phone calls with them and just said, like, what do I need to know? Like, is there anything that I should do more research on for my interviews? And then the last step that I took, which was a little bit unconventional, and I think it made me feel uncomfortable initially, but I shared my personal account via email with the hiring team, because I really had a personal story of like why I wanted to work there. And so I wrote an email to the person that really inspired me to want to work there, and she ended up forwarding it to the hiring team. And then I sent that same email to the hiring team. And usually they only hire internally, so it definitely helps me get seen. But these are definitely things that I learned at Penn as well, of just like Tiffany was saying, like just writing an email and how to kind of craft a story that makes you stand out. Because I think, especially with just like applying on LinkedIn and all of these job sites, it's just so easy to get lost. So like, how do you, how do you stick out from everyone else?
Yay! My career development heart is singing because that's exactly what we try to teach our students, right? So I love, Trevor, that you brought this up idea of working to make relationships with faculty members. I think because the program can be asynchronous in a lot of ways, you have to make the effort, right? Whether it's attending their virtual office hours or scheduling a separate meeting to ask to connect, even if it, and certainly before you're asking for a letter of recommendation or you're asking for some advice on interests in a particular industry. So one of the things that I think this came up earlier, our faculty love to teach our students. They really feel like this is a fantastic, committed, interesting population to work with. And so they're very excited to hear from BAS students who want to connect outside of Canvas, right? Outside of those 8 weeks. So I thought that was a great point, Trevor. Sydney, Tiffany, talking about this idea of networking kind of in different ways. Like Sydney, you brought this idea of informational interviewing up. Yay! That's exactly for those of, again, our current students who are in BAS 4000, when we asked for an informational interview, that's exactly the kinds of things that we were hoping for, or job shadowing. And Tiffany, you have found this way to do some really cool, like actual networking, right? Putting yourself out there, finding folks. I mean, I know in some ways it's been happenstance, right? Because you were saying like a particular person you talked to was on your flight, right? But you didn't have to kind of go the extra mile and introducing yourself and talking about your career path. So these are the hallmarks of great career development, right? Finding ways to advocate for yourself in branding yourself as a problem solver and a way to move an organization's mission forward. So I think it's so cool to hear how each of you did it in your own organic way. It's great. And I'd also like to think that this senior portfolio, I think, Sydney, did you took BAS 4000, right?
Yes, I did. I was the first class.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
okay, and Trevor and Tiffany, you guys were both kind of pre-BAS 4000, if I'm remembering correctly. Or were you, Tiffany, were you in 4000?
I did 4000 as well. Yeah, it was right after. Yes.
Okay. I remember Tiffany's, she would be like, hi, I'm writing to you today from Greece. As she was submitting things, which was really cool. But did you feel like the stuff in BAS 4000, were there particular parts of that course that you really were able to anchor in, or that you found particularly beneficial? I'd just be curious this is kind of an off the cuff, like what about 4,000 helped in this process?
I think just kind of like putting it all together and kind of like, taking pieces from each class and recounting on like your whole journey and being like, oh, okay, like I see where like the thread is here and how this makes sense. And, just like, I think as a whole, it just helps so much, especially at the time. Like I think I was applying for my current job. So I know we did like a whole section on interviewing, and it was just, there's so many positive things that were so applicable to like what I was going through specifically. And it was just such a great way to kind of like finish my pen journey.
And I just want to jump in quickly. I would say, and I don't actually recall if I took the 4,000 course. I don't
I think
remember.
you did it non-credit at this point, Trevor, but I
Okay.
do remember reading what we called your senior portfolio.
No, it was definitely, I remember doing the artifacts. I remember doing the work. I don't remember if it was ever actually a class. I don't think it was. I don't think I remember including it. Um, but I would say overall, just the process of actually taking out artifacts and being able to apply them in the workplace, having these work samples where I can forward them to potential employers and say, look, this is what I can do. This is what I'm good at. And this is what I have research on. Like a lot of the data analytics courses, they're fantastic at producing those artifacts that are impressive. And you're given the freedom to choose the topics that are either most applicable to your career or the ones you're most passionate about. That way, it's this complex project that you have the skills to complete, but it's directly oriented towards your goals, not necessarily the goals of the course. Um, I have to hop off because I have a course that I'll be teaching in about a half hour, so I have to run. But I'll be putting my email in the chat if anyone has any questions for me. I know the Q&A session's still coming.
Trevor, thank you so much for coming today. Can I ask you one final question, which is just what do you have any pieces of advice for either prospective or current students?
Time management is key. So if you know that you'll be working, that you have kids, that you have a family member that you're caring for, just bear in mind that it's still going to be a degree. You're still working, you're still going to school, and the more you balance it, I mean, it gets easier over time, but just definitely pace yourself at the beginning, understand just what the time commitments for each course are. And then once you're ready, once you're confident, that's when you want to jump in and say, I'm going to go full time. Like I'm going to do 2 accelerated courses each semester or each quarter and just go for it. And so that would be my advice there.
Thank you so much. Sorry, my mute button took a second. Trevor, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We really, really appreciate all the things you've done for the BAS. So yeah, we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
And I know Kathy Urban is also, her heart is also singing right now about time management. I know that's one of her favorite things to talk with new students about. So awesome. Okay, so Sydney and Tiffany, I would also love to hear, we can do one at a time, your advice for prospective students as well as your advice for current students. And then after that, I think we can open up and see if there are any audience questions. So feel free, however you'd like to take that. Do you want to start with prospective students first?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
I would say the best advice and something that I learned was don't kind of like write off certain classes before you take them. Like I know, I'm sure Kathy will have a laugh about this, but I was like terrified to take math courses and I really didn't want to take data analytics, and I was trying to find a way not to take it, but I ended up having to take it. And I feel like, I just learned so much about myself through the course and I saw that I actually could do it. So I think there's just so many, don't be like afraid to put yourself out there or to take something that you might think like, oh my God, I'm going to fail this course, or I'm not going to understand what's happening. And I think you will be able to do it. That's why you're in the program, and you'll learn so much about yourself in the process.
I think that's such a good way to say it because initially for my data courses, I was not excited about them. And I am just a student that I don't prefer taking math courses. And then when I realized you are coding to have the computer do the math for you, I was like, oh, this is just learning a foreign language. So I actually, that shocked me. And that's when I changed my degree because I was like, this is a skill set that I didn't even assume that I would have or want to pursue. And now it's progressed me in my career and it's been really beneficial to have that skill set. So I think that is great advice as well to not look at a course and say, oh, I don't want to take that, but to expand your overall knowledge and just kind of interests as a whole.
You both have, you're making me think of, of course, we do lots of program assessment and make sure that students are having the opportunities that we hope that they're having and that our curriculum is doing what we want it to do. And one of the things that has frequently come up is this idea of imposter syndrome, that students come into the program and they think, oh my gosh, am I really cut out for this? Am I a true University of Pennsylvania student? And it takes some time for them to realize that they are, and that y'all are really doing this, right? And you're becoming these University of Pennsylvania alum, and it's part of the 4,000 course. I see confidence skyrocketing. So maybe that's some good advice for prospective students too, that if you are considering this opportunity, that this is really a way for it's okay to be afraid, right? Maybe that's a good way to put it, that you belong here and that we are here to kind of help you become everything you want to be. I don't know, Tiffany or Sydney, do you have thoughts about imposter syndrome or anything related to that?
I think that is a really good topic to discuss while doing everything online because currently my team is built between, so obviously I'm from Penn, somebody else is from MIT, we've got 2 Georgia Tech graduates, we've got a full spectrum of different degrees and places that they've all gone for college. And it was funny because last week when we were just talking as a group and they had sent out a memo when we were hired into our position about each person and what we've done and accomplished. And everybody on my team looked at me and said, everybody was scared to meet you because of your resume. And I was taken back because I was like, oh, me here, I was intimidated walking in the door. I was like, am I qualified for this kind of role? So I think that was really cool. And I just had a meeting with my boss the other day, and he's a captain on the 350. He runs crew resources. He runs our hoteling department, tracking, a pretty big deal amongst the companies. And I'm talking to him and he's like, even your education scared me because I couldn't even get into Penn for my grad school. So I was a little nervous with that. I was like, okay. And then he said that a lot of times when people are looking at just even the name or you're holding it within the business world, simply saying just you went to Penn. And then when people elaborate on the classes, that's the most common that I get questions on is what courses did I take? Not, what was the college campus experience like? And I think that's really cool. So I think definitely as I've been using it throughout my career, it's the imposter syndrome. I'm like, am I qualified for this? Am I this? Whatever. And it's really shown within my work, which is really exciting. So it builds confidence in what I've learned, what I've taken, and everything that I can apply it to in my day-to-day.
Yeah, I think Tiffany's spot on about that. I always think about it because I know working with a lot of artists, there's a lot of imposter syndrome just within the career. And I think the thing that I always tell myself is I'm not going to make the decision for someone else about, how they feel about me or if they think I'm qualified. I'm just going to put myself out there, and the worst that they can say is no. And if it's a no, then, I learned something in the process, but it's not a failure. There's no such thing as failures. And I think that kind of takes the pressure off of me feeling like I have to fit into this niche all of the time. Yeah. So I think it's just, and I feel like Penn fosters that belief in yourself to know that you can do so many different things. And you're not just I know for myself, something that I went through with the transition from being a ballet dancer to being a student was can I even do school anymore? I've been out of it for so long. Can I do the coursework? Can I study? Can I, get good grades? And I think just kind of like taking the chance, and it's, you know, doing it in spite of the fear.
You both are making me think of my favorite career development theory. This sounds so nerdy, right? But my favorite career development theory, which is that of happenstance, right? Our opportunities, our lives are built on what we say yes to. And so that's my favorite when I'm talking to students, imposter syndrome or not. It's about saying yes sometimes. And if it eventually becomes a no, it eventually becomes a no. But you'll never know if you don't say yes. And so I think that you both really embody that, right? That this sometimes it's just about saying yes. That's beautiful, beautiful. All right, so thank you. I would like to give you both an opportunity to kind of like summarize your thoughts. If there's any final things that we didn't discuss that you feel like you'd really like this audience to hear. And audience, I would like to give you the opportunity to start to ask questions. So if you have anything in the chat for Sydney or Tiffany, or perhaps both of them, we would be happy. We'd be happy to hear from you and hopefully be able to answer that for you. So do you want, Sydney or Tiffany, do you want to start with just any kind of final thoughts as we're getting ready to wrap up?
I know you were saying, Kristen, about kind of like our perspective for advice for students that are applying to jobs. And I would say, like, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, where like, just go for it. Even if like you look at a posting and you're like, oh my God, I'm not qualified, I don't have X, Y, and Z skill, like still apply. You never know. Like, don't make the decision for the hiring committee, and, you know, make the call, learn about the position, do as much as possible to like research it, but don't just decide not to apply because you don't think you're qualified or good enough.
I think you both said it really, really well as well. And I remember when I had met Joanne on board, I always ask everybody that inspires me within their own careers. I'm like, what advice would you give your younger self in your career? And she said, take every opportunity presented to you and then you figure it out later. And I feel like that is such a good way to progress yourself, because I would not have expected to be in this role right now. It was not on my radar. It was not on my radar to even pursue pilot ratings. And I have just stumbled upon each opportunity within my career path. And I think that to Penn, because I was already online. I knew I wanted to travel. I did not expect to be a flight attendant. And I was looking for internships at the time. And I saw the position open and I was like, let me apply for it and let's just see what happens. And it's progressed my career immensely. So really try to push yourself outside your comfort zone within your career ambitions and your goals. And a lot of it is figuring it out and going through it and learning the skill sets. And something that I think has really been a surprise to me is how much you learn when stepping into a new role, that it's not just thrown into the fire and letting you figure it out. It's a lot of, here's our technology, here's the skill set. Obviously, it's mindset, what they're looking for when they're hiring, but a lot of the applicable norms to the role itself will be taught. And I think that is something that I didn't recognize as much when stepping into kind of an IT role. And so that's fostered a lot of confidence. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know it because I'm going to be taught it.
So beautiful. You know that for folks who know me on this call, you know that this is how I operate, but I'm so inspired right now and I really mean it, right? Like it's just, you both bring such a sense of hope and optimism to yourselves, but also to this program. I feel really lucky that you both chose us, right? When folks send me emails that say, thank you so much, for helping with my resume or that, I'm like, this is your story. I just had the opportunity to have one little, supporting actor role. And I think, that's a privilege. So thank you so much to both of you for allowing me and us to be a part of your story. I have one more. I see that there's no chat questions. So I have one little question for both of you. Where are we going to find you in 5 years? Any ideas about what comes next? Like 2030, when I ask you to be a part of a panel like this again, where will you be and what will you be doing?
I feel like that's always such a hard question to answer just because I think, I don't know, in a year, so much can change. I would really like to own my own business. It's always been kind of a vision of mine to have my own apothecary. And then on the side, still be helping artists with career transition. I think that would be my goal in 5 years.
I really am trying to get a lot of my hours this year and then hopefully working for a regional within the next 2 years because you have to build time as a pilot in that way. And then segue my back to mainline Delta. And then I'd love to be a sim instructor or a line check airman. Be really great. And then trying to step back into a leadership role, I think eventually. So that might be the 10-year plan, but the 5-year plan back to mainline as probably either sim instructor or line check pilot. So
Beautiful. Well, I hope you both, in fact, I know that I'm going to keep in touch with both of you, and I hope, to celebrate those successes and help you figure out the next step. One of my favorite things to tell students is that there is so much perception in life that careers are A to B, right? That I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to do this, or I'm going to get this job and then I'm going to get this promotion. And really, it's spaghetti, right? It's all over the place. There's twists and turns and ups and downs and places you never expected to go and places that you are so thrilled to have found and then decide to leave, right? It's all about kind of career agility. And I think you both demonstrate that in a beautiful, beautiful way. So many thanks, Sydney and Tiffany, for your time today. Thank you to all of you who are in our audience who have who have been a part of BAS program or are considering Penn LPS Online. Thank you for that. And with that, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you, everyone.